Howdy everyone, Nymph here. Today we're going to be tying a Flexy Floss Bloodworm on a size 12 2x long Nymph hook, and we'll be using 8/0 uni thread in red. Start tying in your thread about the 1/3 mark all the way to the back of the hook, making a nice even thread base. And remove your tag end. Red marabou will be our tailing material, but you can use anything from brushed out floss to wool or anything else that you have. 1/3 of your gap height will be plenty enough to provide a little bit of action in the water and disturb the water, attracting the fish. The marabou can be a little ungangly tying in at times. If you have any issues, just get it wet first and that'll make it a lot easier to tie in. Normally I don't cut tails on flies, but in this case we're going to be cutting it roughly about the width of your bobbin head. If you choose to leave it longer or uncut, feel free to just choke it up before you tie it in. And next we'll tie in the small ultra wire in red. If you don't have red wire, you can use copper, gold, or black. And tie it all the way into the tail base, leaving just a little room. And work your way back to the tie-in point, just evening out the body and the thread base so you have a nice even thread body to wrap the red flexi floss. Most flexi floss has a D shape to it. You'll want to tie in the flat portion towards the hook all the way back to the tie-in point for the tail. And this is a great time to fill in any valleys you have in your thread base to make it as even as you can. Although you can tie bloodworms in a lot of different patterns like chironomids where they have a much thinner body and you're keeping a lot more thread control, I always find that these thicker, chunkier ones just seem to work better. Depending on the thickness and size of your flexi floss, you may want to start the first couple of wraps under more tension than the rest. That'll allow it to thin out and give you a little bit of taper on the butt end. I like to wrap my flexi floss by hand. I still have a hackle pliers on there just in case I drop it or lose tension for a moment. If you remove tension from it, it will unspring just like your wire coils. I'll make a number of firm wraps in front, then one over top, tying it in. That'll just secure it in case something gets dropped, and then another securing it in. The third one, you'll pull it back and just secure over top of the actual floss itself. This will allow you to put some tension on it and cut it off cleanly without it pulling back under your thread wraps. You'll want to counter wrap the red wire away from you, going in between each section if you can. Fish can't count, but bloodworm do have 7 segments up to where their thorax would be. Now wire's getting a bit short on me here, so I'm going to grab my hackle pliers just to make it a bit easier to wrap the final wraps. I do like to make a couple wraps right next to each other at the very end. This helps to secure the wire in. Also adds a little bit of weight for balance there. And a couple wraps in front and a couple behind just to secure it in, and then you can break her off clean. And cover over your tag ends. And give it a little butt fluff and admire the tail. And we'll tie in our peacock hurl, just cutting off the brittle end and then fluffing up the fibers to make them stand out. It's always a good idea to attach some hackle pliers because it is brittle and it can break. And just make 5 to 8 wraps, touching turns up to the head, leaving a good amount of space for the head itself. And the hurl breaks on me just as I tie it in here. Quick save and we can clean it up after. And after we cut off the waist, we'll do a couple half hitches, just a quick save point. And then we'll burn off the excess and the front. Cover the head and thorax with your fingers and kill the rest with fire. Like my bloodworm with a good sized head, they do have a little separation between the thorax and where their head would be, and it just seems to work well. A couple more half hitches, and then you can finish off with your whip finisher. And snug it up with a little tug. After freeing your bobbin, you can add a little bit of head cement, and in this case, Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails. Not using UV resin here as nail varnish, and head cement has the added benefit of having acetone in it. The acetone will cause the pigments in the Flexy Floss to release and give you this really cool 3D transparent red glow that you can't achieve with the UV resin. Rotating vise can make this part a lot easier getting on the underside and the top, but if you don't have one, you can always do a thin coat, give it a moment to set up, and then do a thicker. This will make for an extremely durable fly. You'll want to fish this closer to the bottom, so knowing your depth is important. Just a few inches off the bottom, and that's where you'll find them. They live in the mud in the bottom of the substrate in pretty much every trout lake in BC.